The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
We're going to help each other. The United States is in a very strong position militarily. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. You're buying a lot of that equipment, actually.
Day 2 of President Trump's overseas trip. More economic deals signed as the president looks to strengthen peace in the Middle East, while a bipartisan group of lawmakers are questioning the new relationship. And cabinet secretaries on Capitol Hill defending budget requests, what they had to say about the situation at the border, in the skies, and the health of our country. And then limiting teenage use of social media, what one state is doing to keep kids offline. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Diddy Gatton, and we begin with President Trump continuing his tour of the Middle East in Doha, Qatar today, where he held bilateral talks with the Emir as they signed deals of military cooperation and regional security. Among the agreement with Qatar is a signed letter of intent to purchase armed drones and for joint cooperation with the U.S. It will also buy 160 Boeing jets for Qatar Airways. The deal could be worth up to or even exceeding $200 billion. President Trump also met with interim Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa a day after removing sanctions on the country. According to Syria's foreign ministry, the two leaders discussed the U.S.-Syrian partnership in fighting terror and armed groups. The president says he wants Syria to normalize its relations with Israel, which he says would be good for both countries.
No, not at all. No, this is good for Israel. Having a relationship like I have with these countries, Middle Eastern countries, essentially all of them, I think it's very good for Israel.
President Trump addressed the Gulf Cooperation Council Leaders Summit again, saying he wants to make a deal with Iran, but there are non-negotiable conditions on that deal.
But for that to happen, it must stop sponsoring terror, halt its bloody proxy wars, and permanently and verifiably cease its pursuit of nuclear weapons. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. I don't imagine there's anybody at this table or anybody in this room that would say they can.
With the president in Qatar, questions still remain over whether or not it's appropriate to accept a luxury plane gift from Qatar as a replacement for Air Force One. Despite pushback from the administration, this proposed gift is being perceived as more of a flight risk as it faces bipartisan criticism. National correspondent Matt Galka explains.
President Trump meeting with Qatar's Emir as a costly issue hangs in the air. The Trump administration is in talks to accept a $400 million luxury Boeing jet handed down from the Qatari government to serve as a temporary Air Force One.
I could be a stupid person and say, oh, no, we don't want a free plane. We give free things out. We'll take one, too.
On Truth Social, the president reposted a comparison of the jet to the gift of the Statue of Liberty.
Other nations give us gifts all the time, but I'm going to leave it to the administration. They know much more about the details of that, okay? It's not my lane.
While the House Speaker treads lightly, there's been bipartisan pushback to the potential gift, speculating there's no such thing as a free ride.
This is an issue of outright bribery and a serious issue of national security as well.
I think there's a lot of things Qatar could do for us that would be a lot more helpful than a plane. So on the plane, I think I'd say thanks, no thanks. We're going to build our own planes in the United States of America. We build them pretty good.
There's also the question about what truly is free. Air Force One isn't the same as the plane at your local airport. It would have to be debugged and secured and outfitted with defense weapons and the ability to withstand the effects of a nuclear blast. Stripping the jet down and building it back up could potentially cost around $1 billion.
It's going to have to be put through a lot of paces and probably every square inch analyzed before I think the president should consider it as primary means of transportation. I mean, we're in a world of Doge, so we got to figure out whether it's worth upfitting.
As for American-built Air Force Ones, Boeing already has a nearly $4 billion contract and has already been working on converting two 747s to replace the current Air Force One planes.
And Matt, we heard from members of Congress in your report. Are they taking any action?
Well, Democrats have very limited power in Congress, but they are using what they have right now. In the Senate, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is blocking all Justice Department nominees from going forward until he gets answers about the jet gift.
All right, Matt Galka reporting from the Capitol. Thank you. Right now, 40 million Americans are at risk for severe thunderstorms that could produce giant hail and tornadoes in some places. Parts of South Dakota, Iowa, North Dakota, and Nebraska especially at risk. Now, tomorrow, this threat becomes more severe, impacting twice as many people, including 20 million people under enhanced risk for severe storms. Giant hail, damaging winds, and strong tornadoes are possible. Cities at highest risk include Chicago, Milwaukee, Grand Rapids, and St. Paul. Officials in Virginia say they found the body of a 12-year-old swept away by floodwaters last night. Albemarle County Fire Rescue said this morning crews found who they believe was Jordan Sims. A medical examiner's office will confirm his identity. This comes as several schools in northwestern Maryland remain closed due to severe flooding. Around 200 students and teachers were evacuated from an elementary school yesterday and rescued by boat. Some students had to stay at their high school overnight. Flooding also impacted other states in the east, like Pennsylvania. Firefighters are dealing with 3 uncontained wildfires burning about 37,000 acres in northern Minnesota. The fires have destroyed nearly 150 buildings and triggered evacuation orders. Minnesota's governor said he's authorized the National Guard to help get a handle on the situation. Above normal temperatures fueled the flames, but the causes are still being investigated. State Farm is now allowed to raise premiums 17% for its California home insurance customers to help replenish its capital following the Los Angeles wildfires. This decision comes after California's top insurance regulator is part of the state's efforts to get insurance companies to keep doing business there. State Farm insures around 1 million homeowners in California. And continuing coverage, it is day 3 of testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial. His former girlfriend returned to the stand, testifying more about the alleged freak-offs. These were parties that she says could last days, filled with drug use and forced sex. Ventura says she told Combs she didn't want to take part in them anymore, but also feared he might turn violent if she stopped. She detailed that these freak-offs turned into blackmail opportunities. She also told the court she developed an addiction to opiates to cope with that part of her life. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy on Capitol Hill today as the House holds hearings on budget appropriations for each agency. Secretary Duffy says the fix for the ongoing air traffic shortages at airports like Newark is leading to massive flight delays and cancellations underway, but we won't see immediate improvements.
It takes a year, even for an experienced controller, to get trained up in the Newark airspace. You just can't move them around because they have experience as controllers. But you can't fix this overnight. I can't fix this in a couple months. This is going to take us, a year, 2 years, 3 years.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. also on Capitol Hill today defending proposed cuts to his agency. He's been working with administration officials to shrink the department, firing thousands of staffers and canceling billions of dollars in grants. Both are being challenged in court. One exchange on whether he plans on spending what Congress appropriates got tense.
Or are you planning to break the law by impounding congressionally appropriated funds?
If you appropriate me the funds, I'm going to spend them.
We have. In the bill, you are cutting the NIH by $18 billion. Or you're proposing to cut it by $20 billion.
The Trump administration argues Congress's budget is limited and not mandatory. They say bureaucratic officials can always spend less than what is appropriated. The Environmental Protection Agency is rolling back some restrictions on forever chemicals known as PFAS in drinking water. Today, the agency said it will reconsider Biden-era limits on certain types of PFAS, but keep others in place while extending the deadline for utilities to comply. PFAS have been linked to cancer and other health problems. Becky Hill, the former Carlton County Clerk of Court during the Alex Murdaugh murder trial, turned herself in this morning after being indicted last night on several charges of misconduct in office and obstruction of justice, among others. The National News Desk Claire Weber breaks it all down outside the courthouse in Richland County, South Carolina.
In Richland County, Hill faces 1 count of perjury related to an obstruction charge. This all goes back to allegations of jury tampering during Alex Murdaugh's double murder trial in 2023. Murdaugh was found guilty of killing his wife and son, but after the trial, Murdaugh's legal team accused Hill of trying to influence the jury. One of the jurors said Hill made comments during the trial that influenced her verdict decision. Hill was hit with 76 counts of ethics violations from the State Ethics Commission and eventually resigned as clerk of court. Murdaugh's legal team has been fighting for him to get a new trial based on these allegations. Last year, Hill testified in front of Justice Jean Toll about the jury tampering allegations. We now know the perjury charge stems from this testimony. SLED documents show she lied to Justice Toll about giving evidence to the media. Documents say in February 2023, which was during the 6-week trial, Hill gave released evidence photos to a third party. Last year, Judge Toll said while Hill's testimony on the matter was, quote, not entirely credible, she ruled it did not warrant a new trial for Murdaugh. But Murdaugh's legal team is still pushing for a new trial and waiting on decisions from other courts. Murdaugh's lawyers issued a statement saying in part, quote, we have long raised our concerns about her conduct during and after the trial, and this arrest further underscores the need to protect the integrity of the judicial process. Every defendant is entitled to a fair and impartial trial, and we look forward to Alec Murdaugh finally getting that fair treatment. Hill is expected back in court here in Richland County on July 25th. A judge today giving her a $50,000 PR bond.
Coming up, the ruling that marks the first time a judge has sided with President Trump on his use of an 18th century law for deportations. Then the strict new social media limits that Virginia is placing on teens. Then a new development in the hazing controversy involving a New York high school lacrosse team. We're back in 90 seconds. A Georgetown scholar from India must be released from immigration detention at the order of a federal judge. Badar Khan Suri was arrested in Arlington, Virginia in March. The Trump administration says it revoked his visa because of his social media posts and his wife's connection to Gaza. They also accuse him of supporting Hamas. Lawyers from the ACLU, which argued in support of Khan Suri, calling the ruling a huge victory.
This case presents extraordinary circumstances, including the fact that the government cannot justify Dr. Suri's detention because he was neither and is neither a flight risk or a danger to the community, which the court found.
Suri is an Indian citizen who came to work at Georgetown in 2022. California Governor Gavin Newsom wants to remove illegal aliens from state-funded health insurance known as Medi-Cal. Today, Newsom proposed freezing their enrollment as early as January. The goal here is to California's multi-billion-dollar budget deficit that Newsom blamed partly on the impact of tariffs. Covering illegal aliens under Medi-Cal has also cost more than expected. A federal judge in Pennsylvania has just sided with the president on his use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans he says are a part of a criminal invasion. It's the first time the White House has received support from a judge for his use of the controversial 1798 law, but that same judge also insisted individuals must have time to challenge their deportations. This, as the Trump administration's approach to immigration policy was front and center on Capitol Hill. This Christine Frizzell reports.
Some U.S. border agents and National Guard troops stationed along the southern border reportedly may soon be called to help with interior enforcement to find and arrest those already living inside the country.
The ability to remove people quickly and safely and humanely is something that we would need.
Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons telling Congress his agency is still short on resources, a concern echoed by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, also on Capitol Hill, insisting more money is needed to find and deport the millions who entered the country during the Biden administration.
The message that was sent by the last administration was, come to America, send your worst of your worst. In fact, we'll even facilitate their housing, their food, their clothing, and take care of them and treat them better than we treat U.S. citizens.
The Trump administration has already asked for about $45 billion for ICE to expand its detention capabilities in the country, a number slammed by Democrats who used the hearing to criticize immigration policies carried out in the last few months.
I'm glad you found time among your many photo ops and costume changes to testify about why President Trump is seeking more taxpayer dollars.
The March 15th flight filled with migrants and sent to El Salvador, a top issue for Democrats, who argue many were wrongly deported, including a Venezuelan makeup artist.
The only evidence your department has presented to justify his imprisonment is that he had two tattoos, one that said mom and one that said dad.
Others condemning the recent deportation of children with their undocumented parents, including a young child with stage 4 cancer.
2-year-old American citizen. Can't we slow it down and just take a moment before they're deported in 24 hours?
Taking a moment to slow down, the opposite of the current strategy by the Trump administration, instead pushing full steam ahead on its mass deportation program. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
19-year-old Amar Abdul Majid Mohammed Saeed, formerly of Michigan's Army National Guard, in court today facing charges of planning an ISIS-inspired mass attack at a military facility outside of Detroit. Prosecution says he planned to carry out that attack yesterday, but was arrested by 2 undercover agents with whom was planning the assault. The prosecution wants him held without bond. Saeed faces 20 years in prison if convicted. And as we look ahead, President Trump says he'd consider a detour in the first major foreign trip of his second term. Speaking in Doha, Qatar earlier today, the president says Russia's President Vladimir Putin wants him to be at the peace talks in Istanbul tomorrow between his Russia and Ukraine leaders. As of now, Russia has not said whether President Vladimir Putin will attend or not.
He would like me to be there, and that's a possibility. If we could end the war, I'd be thinking about it.
According to President Trump, he has a full schedule tomorrow with a state visit in Qatar, but he's willing to go to Turkey for the talks if it would save lives. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be there. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky says he also plans to attend and says if Putin does not go, it's proof that Russia does not want to end the war. The number of student loan borrowers who have failed to make a payment on time is at a 5-year high. The New York Federal Reserve says over 10% of balances and around 6 million borrowers are past due or are in default. Since pandemic-era relief expired, many Americans have fallen behind. The New York Fed warns of severe economic consequences for delinquency, but says overall economic impacts are less likely. Democrats are still deeply pessimistic about their party's future 6 months after their presidential candidate lost. That's according to a new AP NORC poll. It found only 35% of Democrats are optimistic about their party's future, down from 57% last July. In contrast, just over half of Republicans are optimistic about their party's future, up from July. New developments soon. Teens in Virginia will be limited on how much time they can spend on social media. The law signed by Governor Glenn Youngkin is an amendment to the state's Consumer Data Protection Act. It places the responsibility on social media companies to make sure their underage users are complying to the new law. But how this will be enforced is still up in the air. The National News Desk, John Gonzalez, has more.
So we know that starting January 1st of next year, social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube will have to verify ages and will automatically have to restrict minors to a daily limit. The law also requires the data used for age checks to not be used for anything else, raising questions about how companies will actually enforce this. So the law places the onus on social media companies to verify users' ages, utilizing commercially reasonable methods such as neutral age screens to determine if a user is under 16, limit usage, restrict minors' access to 1 hour per day on their platforms unless there is parental consent, and data usage, ensuring that any data collected for age verification is used solely for that purpose and not for other data processing activities. However, the law does not detail specific penalties for non-compliance. This lack of clarity also has led to concerns about the implementation and effectiveness of the law. For example, a child may find ways to bypass the restrictions, such as using VPNs or creating accounts with false age information, and they might just move over to another platform that is not covered under this new law here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Coming up, the mistake on a piece of President Trump merchandise that was no laughing matter to the Rhode Island couple who purchased it. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in New York with a new development in the ongoing high school hazing controversy.
The incident that has been the talk of the West Hill School District and made national headlines over the last few weeks was not on the agenda for the West Hill School Board meeting, but the superintendent did address it.
The students who are involved have accepted responsibility and are facing school consequences under the District Code of Conduct, as well as whatever legal consequences take place through the District Attorney's Office.
The hazing allegations involve 11 members of the high school lacrosse team. The Onondaga County District Attorney says the teams drove newer members of the team to a remote area. People dressed in black then came out of the woods, armed with what happens to be an airsoft gun and at least one knife. Currently, it has not yet been decided how the district will discipline those involved.
More staffing and more technology. That's the goal of a new federal proposal to help ports of entry like this one in Eagle Pass. The people that we've talked to today say it could help them get through faster.
I pretty much go almost every day to Mexico. I
I have businesses on both sides of the border.
Morris Libson is very familiar with the process of crossing back and forth across the border.
So sometimes I go and come maybe 2 or 3 times.
And for the border community, he says staffing at these ports is a huge deal. More staff could make these journeys last 3 or 4 minutes rather than 3 or 4 hours some days.
Showing support for the president and love for his wife.
Just thought it was really nice. It was beautiful. And I knew it would be something that she'd like.
A limited edition.
One of 250.
And Tim Pettit shelled out $640 for a watch that may now be even more of a one-of-a-kind than he bargained for.
Get your Trump watch right now. Go to gettrumpwatches.com. It's Trump time.
Pettit bought the watch after hearing an ad like that one on the radio.
The T is missing. It just says RUMP.
So it should say Trump.
Should say Trump.
Instead,
it says rump.
I think that someone needs to be aware of it in their licensing department.
Coming up, call it perfect timing. The baseball celebration that is taking on new meaning for one of the all-time greats. And what does fans have to say about it? We'll be right back after this. In Cincinnati, fans are gathering in celebration of Pete Rose Night. This day was picked before he was lifted from baseball's banned list last night.
I come to celebrate one of the greatest baseball players in my time, and that's Pete Rose.
Cincinnati baseball, he was Cincinnati baseball.
He gave it his all in every game. He was a good manager when he was managing, and I just think he's a great guy.
Fittingly, the Reds are playing the Chicago White Sox, who also had some of their players like shoeless Joe Jackson taken off the ban list last night. That's going to do it for us for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again tonight as we dive into a foiled terror plot at a school in San Antonio. Why authorities think it was a family plan. I'm Didi Gatton. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again tonight at 10.